Swagatam. In our previous two lessons, we learned how to write the Devanagari script. Now we will plunge into the actual learning of the language, but we will start with a revision of what we have looked at in Introduction to Basic Spoken Sanskrit. So this particular lecture, the lecture number 3, will be a revision and practice of the vibhakti or the declension forms of the masculine words ending with the a. So this course will be on the revisiting of the bhakti and their implications on our thinking, and then we will do a revision of the pullinga words ending with the akara in the ekavachanam or in the singular thing. Then we will do a revision of the simple dhatu rupa or the verb conjugations in different tenses, and finally I will also emphasize on building your vocabulary. So let's move on. A simple recap of what the declensions can do to our mind. So the declensions in a very simple way are when the preposition is fused in with the nouns. So for example, you have for or to the boy in English. In Sanskrit you would say balakaya. So it gets fused into it. So this allows a certain brevity of expression. For example, you see that the girl goes to school. Now if I have to put that in Sanskrit, it will be balika. You can start following the writing as well. So balika vidyalayam gachati. So balika vidyalayam gachati. Balika, here that indicates that it is the subject, the girl. Vidyalayam, the yam indicates it's a destination, and gachati, goes. So we see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 words have been compressed into 3 words, and then the longer the sentences, the more you find the brevity in the Sanskrit expression. Now what happens as a benefit of this declension form? How does it affect our thinking? So we see that words are self-contained in the sense with respect to others in a sentence. Now what I mean by that is when you say the boy goes to school versus balakaha vidyalayam gachati or balika vidyalayam gachati, when I tell you the word boy, if I just told you the word boy, you would have no idea about what that boy is doing in my thought. But when I say balakaha, you know that it is the subject, that he is the subject of my verb. Similarly, if I told you school, if I didn't tell you to school, you would have no idea about what the school was doing in my head. But the moment I say vidyalayam, I know that it is the destination of my journey, or it is the accusative form which would tend to indicate the destination. And therefore, there is a clarity in understanding the relationship of the different words in my thought by the mere usage of one word along with its vibhakti. And finally, what this can lead to in a subconscious manner is that it facilitates mental clarity in perceiving the world and creativity in expression. So when I say facilitates mental clarity in perceiving the world, very subconsciously it requires the mind to start looking at relationships. And things are not in their individual nature alone. Everything is in relationship to everything else. And in order to express the world around in Sanskrit, one has to have a clarity of how these different objects and people around us are interrelated. So that I think helps build a subconscious clarity of mind. And when I said creativity in expression, what it allows us to do is to also mix the words in different orders. I am not forced by a linear expression. Like if I say the boy goes to school, I cannot say the goes boy school to. I have to stick to a certain format, a certain linearity in thinking happens as a consequence of using languages that have a very strict or fixed order of expression. In Sanskrit, because every word is independent in its expression, you can turn the words around. I mean, you can put them in different orders and still it would mean the same thing. but that allows a certain flexibility of the mind to emergence. So I can say balakaha vidyalayam gachati, like we see there, or vidyalayam balakaha gachati, gachati vidyalayam balakaha. I can do all permutations and combinations, and generally if there are no words of emphasis, the meaning would be retained. So it allows greater, I would say, creativity and flexibility for the mind. So the declensions have these kind of effects on our mental composition. Now, saying this, let's move on with a certain sambhashanam or conversation to highlight the different vibhaktis of the pullinga or masculine words ending with the akara or a. And so I'd like to invite Piyush, and we'll do the conversation and then we'll analyze it together. Hari Om Piyushaha, kam pashyati? Kopi gacchati kim?
आम् एकः छात्रः गच्छति अहं तं छात्रं पश्यामि
Bhavan kutra gacchati?
अहम् आपणं गच्छामि
Katham tatra gacchati?
अहम् एतेन मार्गेण वाहनेन च आपणं गच्छामि
Kena saha apanam gacchati?
अहं तेन छात्रेण सह आपणं गच्छामि
Bhavan kimartham apanam gacchati?
अहं मधुरं क्रेतुम् आपणं गच्छामि
Kasmai madhuram dasyati?
अहं तस्मै छात्राय मधुरं दास्यामि
Bhavan janakasya krite kimapi na swikarishyati?
अवश्यम् अहं तस्मै छात्राय मधुरं कृत्वा मम जनकस्य कृते अपि मधुरं स्वीकरिष्यामि
Astu, tasmat apanat anyat kim swikarishyati or kreshyati?
तस्मात् आपणात् अहं पूर्वमेव सर्वं स्वीकृतवान् अतः ततः छात्रावासं गमिष्यामि
Bhavan kasya chhatravasam gamishyati?
अहं तस्य छात्रस्य छात्रावासं गमिष्यामि
Oh, tasmin chhatravase kim karishyati?
भवती जानाति यदा सर्वे जनाः पृच्छन्ति कस्मिन् छात्रावासे उत्तमं भोजनं मिलति तदा उत्तरं भवति तस्मिन् एव छात्रावासे स्वादिष्टं भोजनं मिलति अतः अहम् आपणतः मधुरं कृत्वा सायंकाले तत्र खादितुं गमिष्यामि
Evam va, uttamam. Aho, samaya abhavat.
अस्तु आर्ये पुनर्मिलामः हे छात्र तिष्ठतु अहं गच्छामि शीघ्रम् आगच्छामि
Astu. So in that previous dialogue, you saw how Piyush and I tried to use words from the masculine or the pullinga words in the ekavachanam and using the different vibhaktis. So I thought we will look at the whole dialogue once again, but this time underlying the grammatic as well as the written part of the conversation. So here we have Arya. Arya, that's the teacher, and Shishya is here Piyusha. So Harihi Om Piyusha. Kam pashyati, so the accusative, or athava dvitiya vibhakti. Kopi gacchati kim. So here you see with the kopi, it is the kopi is the kaha api together. Kopi gacchati kim. Ekaha chhatraha gacchati. So that's the first vibhakti. Next, aham tam chhatram pashyami. So that's the second here. Then bhavan gachati, destination, which is also in the second. Aham apanam gachami. Next, katham tatra gachati. The answer to katham is generally in the instrumental or the tritiya vibhakti. Aham tena margena vahanena cha apanam gachami. Okay, so we see the third case there. And then Kena saha, with whom? So that's the third. Kena saha apanam gachati. Aham tena chhatrena saha. So that's the three. Tena chhatrena saha apanam. That's the two. Gachami. Bhavan kimartham. So the question kimartham normally needs the dative case. So kimartham apanam gachati. I'll no longer mark the apanam, or I can do it still, is the second one. So kimartham apanam gachati. So it says aham madhuram, it's the object case. So it's object madhuram kretum. We had looked at the tumun forms in the introduction to basic Sanskrit. So it means to buy. Okay. So to buy. Aham madhuram kretum apanam gachami. Kasmai madhuram dasyati, the fourth. And then aham tasmai chhatraya dasyami. Next, bhavan janakasya, that's the sixth one. Bhavan janakasya krite, although it's the sixth one, but this particular combination is with the, it requires the dative. Janakasya krite kimapi na swikarishyati. And then here we see we are also introducing the future. Okay, so here we have aham chhatraya, avashyam aham chhatraya madhuram kritva, that's another form we saw, which means after doing. Janakasya krite, again the sixth, but together it is the fourth. Api madhuram swikarishyami. And then tasmat aparnat, fifth. Anyat kim kreshyati. Tasmat aparnat aham purvameva kritavan. So this is the equivalent of the past. Ataha tataha, this is the equivalent of the fifth case, from there. Okay. Chhatravasam, destination gamishyami, I will go. Bhavan kasya, the sixth one. Chhatravasam. So you see, you have to have the ideas very clear. So kasya chhatravasasya gamishyati will be wrong. So you have to say kasya chhatravasam, because chhatravasam is the destination. Kasya is asking you whose. Kasya chhatravasam gamishyati. Aham tasya chatrasya chatravasam gamishyami. Moving on. Tasmin in the seventh one. Okay. Chatravase kim karishyati. Bhavati janati yada sarve janaha. So this is the first plural. Prichanti, also it combines with the plural. Kasmin, the seventh, the question. Kasmin chhatravase uttamam bhojanam milati. Uttamam bhojanam is the object here, and therefore uttamam bhojanam milati. Tada, so here we have yada and tada that come together. Okay. Tada uttaram bhavati yat. Yat here means that. Tasmin, again seventh, eva chhatravase swadishtam. So swadishtam bhojanam milati. You get what? You get tasty food. Swadishtam bhojanam. So this is the object, and therefore in the accusative case. Milati iti. Ataha aham apanataha. This is the equivalent of the fifth. Apanataha madhuram kritva sayankale. So when it's indicating the time, again it will become the locative or the saptami vibhakti. Khaditum. So here we've seen with the tum, to eat. Gamishyami. Then uttamam. Aho samayaha abhavat. So has happened, abhavat. What has happened? So this is the past. What has happened? Samayaha. So this is in the first case or the nominative. And then astu arye, and then he says punar milamaha. Gachani. So as you see, the gachani here is the request form, which is an equivalent of the gachami, kim. So when you ask it in the question form. And then finally, he chhatra, this together is the eighth. He chhatra tishthattu, with respect. Aham shighram agachami. Uttamam. So I think we've done a nice dissection of that one. So let's do some practice. But before we go on to the practice, I wanted to share with you these two resource books. The first being Speak Sanskrit, The Easy Way by my professor Dr. Narendra, who did extensive work on trying to find words and easy ways to depict the grammar of the Sanskrit language. So this is a book which has a lot of vocabulary of daily use, and if you want to practice spoken Sanskrit, this is an excellent resource material. I would also like to share with you his PhD thesis that got converted into a book form, and this is called Sanskritasya Vyavaharika Rupam, the functional Sanskrit, its communicative aspect. And this is another book that you can get from any store related to the Sri Aurobindo Ashram Trust, Shabda. There are other stores like that where you can get it. And so these are some things, and even if you look on the Sri Aurobindo Sanskrit Karyalaya website, you will get a lot of the information about these books, I think. So do have a look at them, but excellent resource to practice with. And with these few words, let's move on to the Abhyasaha, or the practice. And in this one, we'll first start with the masculine form. So we have, the question is, Kaha kim karoti? Who does what? So let's see how it has been presented. Saha or Eshaha, Gayakaha, Gayati. So Gayakaha, Gayati. The Kaha as a suffix indicates one who does, Karoti iti. Okay, so Gayakaha, Gayati. Kaha Gayati, Saha Gayakaha, Gayati. Next, Saha Kridakaha, Kridati. Try. Rakshakaha, Rakshati. Kaha Rakshakaha, Saha Rakshaka, or Eshaha Rakshakaha, Rakshati. Moving on. Saha Vicharakaha, Vicharayati. So I'd like you to notice that before that we had a word which was Rakshakaha, and the corresponding verbs was Rakshati. Here we have Vicharaka and it becomes Vicharayati. Alright, there's a slight modification and an introduction of the year there. So Randhakaha, Randhayati. Anuvadakaha, Anuvadayati. Nayakaha in the subject, Nayati. So what do you mean by the Nayakaha, Nayati? Nayati, to take us. How does that happen? He transports us. Lovely. Pachakaha, Pachati. Chitrakaraha, Chitram karoti. Patrakaraha, Patram karoti. Tantrajnaha, Tantram janati. So jnaha as a suffix for janati. Shastra jnaha, Shastram janati. Astu. So let's look at the accusative, or the second case, or the Dvitiya Vibhakti, and see what happens. Now here there is a certain table, and it will be helpful if I explained it to you. So in the first column you have all the pronouns, the different persons who will be doing the actions which are in the last column, and the green color code here is telling you about the plural that is there and corresponding to that band. So the third person with the third person here, the second person with the second person in there, and the first person with the first person here. Alright, the second column is about the second case, or whichever case we are studying will normally typically be in the second column. And then we have the nouns, so the pronouns and the nouns corresponding to the case that we are studying. So I'll take you through one of this quickly, and then you can follow the same pattern for the other slides. So kam pashyati, answer, saha tam gayakam pashyati. Saha tam kridakam pashyati. I'll encourage you to do this action, okay? Saha tam rakshakam pashyati. Saha tam vicharakam pashyati. Now let's do some plural there. So we'll do te tam randhakam pashyanti. Te tam anuvadakam pashyanti. Alright, let's do it with tvam. So we have tvam etam chitrakaram pashyasi. Tvam etam patrakaram pashyasi. We'll repeat the same ones with the with the plural. So yuyam etam chitrakaram pashyatha. Yuyam etam patrakaram pashyatha. Uttamam. And then with the aham, so aham tantra, aham tam tantrajñam pashyami, and the last one with the vayam with the near one, etam shastrajñam pashyamaha. So just basically to associate the verbs with the different pronouns that we have here, but feel free to mix and match in the right manner. Alright, the tam, etam, whichever. So that will give you the practice of the different forms. So to practice it a last time, so gayakaha, gayakam, kridakaha, kridakam, rakshakaha, rakshakam, vicharakaha, vicharakam, randhakaha, randhakam, anuvadakaha, anuvadakam, chitrakaaraha, chitrakaram, patrakaraha, patrakaram, tantrajñaha, tantrajñam, shastrajñaha, shastrajñam. Uttamam. Let's move on to the next one, which is also another use of the accusative, but in terms of the destination. And here I propose that we only stick to the saha to make the task easy. So saha bhojanalayam gacchati. Saha kutra gacchati? Second one, patralayam gacchati. Chikitsalaya, chikitsalayam gacchati. Sachivalaya, sachivalayam gacchati. Granthalaya, granthalayam gacchati. Himalaya, himalayam gacchati. Athitinilaya, atithinilayam gacchati. Uttamam. So let's move on to the next case, the third or the instrumental or the tritiya vibhakti. And what do we have? The question that corresponds to this case is katham gamishyati or kena gamishyati. And so here we have, we'll stick to the saha. So saha tena rathena gamishyati. Kena rathena, tena rathena gamishyati. Or katham gamishyati, rathena gamishyati. Or tena rathena gamishyati. Ashvaha saha tena ashvena gamishyati. Uttamam. Darshakaha tena darshakena gamishyati. Sahayakaha, we'll keep the tena out. Sahayakena gamishyati. Sainikaha sainikena gamishyati. Yatrikaha yatrikena gamishyati. Yantrajñaha yantrajñena gamishyati. Vaijñanikaha vaijñanikena gamishyati. Kena vaijñanikena? Tena or etena vaijñanikena gamishyati. Krishakaha krishakena gamishyati. Jyeshtha jyeshthena gamishyati. Kanishtaha kanisthena gamishyati. Uttamam. Now I'll give you one sentence to translate and let's see if you can get it right. So we will go with this scientist. Alright, let's see how you've done it. So we is vayam and the corresponding verb you have to automatically have it in place. This scientist. So this, that and this. So this and scientist, this, and you have to put the corresponding case with it. So vayam etena vaijñanikena gamishyamaha. And you can mix and match that. Gamishyama, vaijñanikena, etena, vayam. It doesn't really change the meaning on the whole. Alright, let's move on. And here we see we have the next one for the dative or the fourth case and the chaturthi vibhakti. So what do we do here? The question corresponding to it is kimartham dasyati. Why will you give? And the corresponding pronoun with this is kasmai dasyati. With giving it is always the dative. So what do we have here? Saha tasmai anandaya dasyati, for joy. Santoshaha tasmai santoshaya dasyati. Vishwavidyalaya becomes Vishwavidyalayaya. Uttamam. Dasyati. Gurukulaya dasyati. Kasmai gurukulaya? Tasmai gurukulaya dasyati. Ashramaya dasyati. Pathakaya dasyati. Chalakaya dasyati. Palakaya dasyati. Apanikaya dasyati. Yogaya dasyati. Kimartham jivanam dasyati? Yogaya jivanam dasyati. For the sake of yoga, give their lives to yoga or for yoga. Then karyalaya, karyalayaya dasyati. Uttamam. So let's do another sentence and see. I'll give you a sentence to translate and let me see if you can do it correctly. So, you in the singular will give to that ashram. You will give to that ashram. Alright, got it? So, you is tvam, corresponding verb dasyasi, and that is tasmai, ashram there. Now, let's do that. Tvam tasmai ashramaya dasyasi. Uttamam. So, I hope you've got a hang of that. You have these slides, the more you practice, the more you will be familiar with the usage of the vibhaktis. Going on to the next one, which is the fifth case or the ablative, and here the question that corresponds to this case is kutaha or kasmat. Kutaha is from where and kasmat also is from whom or from where. It can mean both. So, saha tasmat vittakoshat agatavan. Kutaha agatavan or agatavati tasmat vittakoshat, bank, agatavan or agatavati. So, we'll stick to agata. Let's do with sa to make a change there. Okay. So, sa, and we'll use the form agatavati. So, sa kutaha agatavati, sa tasmat vittakoshat agatavati. Next, yatri nivasa. So, sa tasmat yatri nivasat agatavati. Swadesha. Sa tasmat swadeshat agatavati. Then the next one is grama. Sa tasmat gramat agatavati. Prakoshtat, prakoštha tasmat prakošthat agatavati. Kasmat prakošthat, this room. So, etasmat prakošthat. Uttamam. Now, let's, I'll give you as usual another sentence to translate. So, can you tell me how you plural formal masculine, you plural formal masculine will or came from the village, came from that village. You formal masculine plural came from that village. Alright. So, you formal plural in the masculine is bhavantaha, came. So, agatavantaha, and from that village tasmat, and village gramat. So, bhavantaha tasmat gramat agatavantaha. You see how much of calculation the brain has to do to hold all those details in the mind, and that is what basically helps this language, speaking this language helps to waken up the brain cells and the mind in general, and also bring a lot of clarity. So, let's move on to the next one, which is kasya. So, kasya asti, whose is it? And this is the genitive or the sixth case, which is the shashti vibhakti. So, what happens here? Tasya vittakoshasya nama kim asti? SBI asti, the State Bank of India asti. So, tasya vittakoshasya nama SBI asti. Kasya vittakoshasya nama? Tasya vittakoshasya nama. Yatrinivasasya. Kasya yatrinivasasya? Tasya yatrinivasasya nama Samarpan guest house, for example. Next, swadeshasya. So, we'll do about the, you will use smaranam here. So, kasya smaranam asti? Swadesha, swadeshasya smaranam asti. Grama, gramasya smaranam asti. Kasya gramasya? Etasya gramasya smaranam asti. Prakoštha varnaha sundaraha. So, varnaha color, sundaraha beautiful. So, and because it's masculine singular, it goes with it. Kasya varnaha sundaraha asti? Tasya prakošthasya varnaha sundaraha asti. Uttamam. So, vittakoshaha, vittakoshasya, yatrinivasaha, yatri nivasasya, swadeshah swadeshasya, grama gramasya, prakoštha prakošthasya. Uttamam. Let's move on to the next one, and in the next one we have the use of the locative, and the locative is usually associated with the question kutra asti or kutra bhavishyati, where will it be location wise, or kasmin bhavishyati, and the locative is the seventh case, and as well as the it is also the it has the ashtami vibhakti there. Okay, so here we have saha tasmin pathe bhavishyati. Kutra bhavishyati? Tasmin pathe. Saha tasmin marga becomes marge bhavishyati. Vrikshaha tasmin vrikshe bhavishyati. Akasha tasmin akashe bhavishyati. Syuta tasmin syute bhavishyati. Sagara tasmin sagare bhavishyati. Jangala tasmin jangale bhavishyati. Uttamam. One question for you as usual. So, you plural will be in the forest. So, you plural will be in the forest. You plural, yuyam, it's there in the word itself, will be in the forest. So, jangale bhavishyatha. I did not specify that forest or this forest, so just this would be enough. Supposing I wanted to add you will be in this forest, then etasmin. Say that, yuyam etasmin jangale bhavishyatha. Uttamam. And let's look at the last one, or the vocative case, or the eighth case. And what do we see here? We have he. So it's the sambodhanam here. So he gayaka keeps the root form. He gayaka bahu kalanantaram darshanam abhavat. Seeing you after a long time. Kridaka, he kridaka. Next, rakshaka, he rakshaka. Savadhanam shrunotu. So here we have savadhanam shrunotu. Listen carefully. So can we do that once more? He rakshaka savadhanam shrunotu. Vicharaka, he vicharaka. Randhaka, he randhaka. And you can use either of these sentences there. Savadhanam, I just thought I will also add here. Savadhanam means carefully. Shrunotu is listen. Alright. So you can practice with these variations here. Now, let's do a quick recap or a revision of this, of the third person pronouns and nouns in the singular with the masculine words ending with a. So we have kaha or kaha, kam, kena, kasmai, kasmat, kasya, kasmin. Uttamam. So the word ending or rather the pronoun tat, what happens? Saha, tam, tena, tasmai, tasmat, tasya, tasmin. Uttamam. And then let's take the word janakaha. What happens to janaka as the root in its different vibhakti forms? Janakaha, janakam, janakena, janakaya, janakat, janakasya, janake, he janaka. Now let's move on there. There is a verse, a shloka, which uses all these 8 cases, and it goes like this. Ramo Rajamani Sada Vijayate Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena Bhita Nishacharachamu Ramaya Tasmai Namaha Rama Nasti Parayanam Parataram Ramasya Dasyosmyaham Rame Chittalayah Sada Bhavatu Me He Rama Mamuddhara. So it's a devotional invocation to Rama, and we see Ramo is a sandhi form of the word Ramaha, and it's in the first case. Ramo Rajamani Sada Ramam to Ramam Ramesham Bhaje Ramena. So this is Ramena. Abhihitam becomes Ramena Abhihita. So that's the third one. Nishacharachamu Ramaya Tasmai Namaha. Raman Nasti is again a phonetic sandhi there. of Ramat plus Nasti. So Ramat is the fifth. Ramasya dasosmyaham. Rame chittalaya sada bhavatu me. He Rama is the vocative. Mam uddhara. So the meaning of this one is may Rama, the jewel among the kings, always be victorious. I worship Rama, the Lord of Lakshmi. The armies of the demon Ravana were killed by Rama. To that Rama I bow down. There is no better way than Rama. I am the servant of Rama. May my mind dwell in that Rama. O Rama, do save me. From this worldly ocean is an associative meaning there. Alright, so these are the references that I have used. So with that, I'd close with a verse, a quotation again from Dr. Manmohan Singh in the conference, World Sanskrit Conference. He says that the Sanskrit language has also been the source of values and ideals that have sustained India through the ages. So once you know the script, once you know the grammar, there's nothing that comes between you and this immense knowledge treasure house that is there in Sanskrit literature. So Punarmilama, Dhanyavadaha.